People often ask me, why do we need computer simulation models? What's the big deal? The honest answer is that simulation is best experienced rather than explained. So rather than making the case in the abstract, this exercise will put you directly into a scenario, one deliberately simple enough that you should, in theory, be able to figure it out without any tools at all. By the end, you'll have a first-hand sense of why that turns out to be harder than it sounds, and what stock and flow mapping combined with computer simulation can do that our unaided minds simply cannot. Before we get into the exercise, 3 claims worth sitting with. We are good at identifying the parts of a system, but words alone are insufficient to turn that knowledge into a useful mental model. Our ability to mentally simulate is inadequate, even when we have a reasonably good model. And when we combine our expertise about a system's parts with visual mapping and computer simulation, we can dramatically improve both our mental models and our ability to reason about how a system will behave. These aren't pessimistic claims, they're a starting point. The goal of this exercise is to make them concrete. Let's start by defining mental models. Mental models are the causal theories about how a system works, how it will behave as time unfolds, and where we might intervene to change the way that system is unfolding. We make decisions and investments, implement interventions, allocate resources, all in the effort to change system behavior, and we do this based upon our mental models. We are very good at understanding the parts of a system. It's a little harder to integrate those parts using words alone. And our ability to accurately simulate mental models is often anemic relative to the challenges we face. Let's create a simple mental model about staffing at a hospital. You are the HR director at General Hospital. Your job is to manage the hospital's nursing workforce. The system you're responsible for is governed by exactly 7 rules. No hidden assumptions, no trick wording. Here they are. 1. There are 2 categories of nurses and only 2, experienced and inexperienced. 2nd, for months, the hospital has maintained the same number of experienced nurses. 3rd, during that same period, a steady number of experienced nurses have been quitting each month. 4. Hospital policy is to immediately hire 1 inexperienced nurse for every experienced nurse who quits. 5th, all inexperienced nurses complete a 6-month training program, after which they become experienced. 6th, due to the quality of the training, no inexperienced nurse ever quits before completing the program. 7th, 3 months from now, there will be a one-time permanent increase in the quit rate. From that point forward, experienced nurses will quit at this new higher rate indefinitely. That's the entire system. 7 rules, 2 types of nurses. Real workforce systems have dozens of moving parts and layers of policy. This one has 7 assumptions. It should be easy to guess what happens next. Given what you know, experienced nurses have been holding steady, but 3 months from now the quit rate will jump to a permanently higher level. What happens to the number of experienced nurses on the staff after that shift? Don't overthink it. Trust your instincts. Pause the video here to sketch your guess. Did you take a guess? I'll use the interactive tool to sketch mine. Which of these patterns most closely matches yours? I'll select the oscillates down for the example. Take a look at the range of common guesses that tend to emerge from a room of 30 or more people. The variety is striking, not just differences in magnitude, but differences in kind. Some people expect oscillation. Some expect a gradual decline that levels off. Some expect an initial drop followed by a return to the original level. Some expect a permanent decline to 0. These aren't minor disagreements about how much something changes. They represent fundamentally different theories about how the system works, and they lead to fundamentally different management strategies. If it's this difficult for a group of thoughtful people to agree on a system with 7 rules and 2 variables, consider the challenge of aligning a room full of stakeholders around a system that's genuinely complex. That gap between what we know about the parts and what we can reliably predict about the whole is exactly what this exercise is designed to make visible. The difficulty isn't a failure of intelligence or effort. It's a limitation of the tools we use to describe systems. And the main tool we use is language. Words create ambiguity. When we try to describe the interconnections of a system in sentences, we tend to talk about one relationship at a time. It's hard to hold multiple feedback loops, time delays, and accumulations in mind simultaneously. We end up with something like a partial map, accurate in pieces but not integrated into a working whole. To do better, we need a visual language. The language we'll use here is stocks and flows. Stocks and flows have two building blocks. The stock is an accumulation. Think of it as a bathtub. It accumulates things: headcount, cash, inventory. It can also accumulate less tangible variables like trust, morale, or burnout. Crucially, a stock exists at a point in time. If you froze the clock right now, you could count exactly how many experienced nurses are in the hospital. That's a stock. In General Hospital, we have two stocks: experienced nurses and inexperienced nurses. Flows are the rates that change stocks, the pipes and drains connected to the bathtub. General Hospital has three. Quitting, an outflow from the experienced nurses stock. Nurses leave the hospital entirely. In the diagram, they flow out to a cloud, which signals that they've left the system boundary and are no longer our concern strategically. Hiring, an inflow into the inexperienced nurses stock. New nurses arrive from outside the system. Also a cloud. Becoming experienced, a flow that moves nurses from the inexperienced stock into the experienced stock. One critical structural feature deserves special attention: the time delay between hiring and becoming experienced. In the diagram, the inexperienced nurses stock is represented as a conveyor, a visual reminder that each nurse who is hired steps onto the first position in the training pipeline and moves through it for exactly 6 months before emerging as experienced. The delay isn't just a detail, it significantly contributes to how the system performs. The final element is the hiring policy. For every experienced nurse who quits, one inexperienced nurse is hired. Mathematically, the hiring rate always equals the quitting rate. Now the full system is in front of you, visually assembled, all 7 assumptions represented. With the map now visible, you may want to reconsider your original guess. The interactive tool gives you that option. Pause now if you wish to take a new guess, then play when ready. Most people don't change their guess at this point, but those who do are often closer to the simulated result. Something about seeing the structure laid out. The two separate stocks, the time delay, the policy, makes the dynamics a little more legible. At month 3, the quit rate increases. Watch what happens to experienced nurses. The stock declines steadily for exactly 6 months and then levels off at a new lower equilibrium. Most people don't predict this on the first try. In sessions with senior engineers, executives, and seasoned managers, almost no one does. That's not a reflection of their expertise or intelligence. It's a reflection of the limits of mental simulation. Here's the underlying logic made visible. When the quit rate jumps at month 3, upstream the hiring rate also immediately jumps to match it. But those newly hired nurses won't become experienced for 6 months. For the next 6 months, the outflow of quitting exceeds the inflow of becoming experienced. Anytime the outflow of a stock exceeds the inflow, the stock goes down. This is a fundamental rule of any accumulation. At month 9, 6 months after the quit rate increased, the wave of newly hired nurses completes training and begins flowing into the experienced stock. At that point, the inflow equals the outflow, and the level stabilizes at its new lower value. The system doesn't oscillate, it doesn't recover, it reaches a new steady state, lower than before, and it takes exactly 6 months to get there. This is more than a staffing story. The same logic applies wherever stocks and flows exist. If you want experienced nurses to remain steady, the rate at which they become experienced must equal the rate at which they quit. If you want trust in a community to grow, the rate at which trust is built must exceed the rate at which it is lost. We often focus on only one side of a stock, the inflow or the outflow, when the answer to reaching a desired level may lie in understanding both. Simulation allows us to do what the human mind cannot do reliably on its own: trace out the logical implications of a set of assumptions over time. A group of experts on a real system can pool their understanding of different parts. Visual mapping transforms that knowledge into an integrated operational picture of how the system actually works. And then simulation lets us test that picture to see what it implies, where it surprises us, and where we might intervene to change outcomes. 3 conclusions from this exercise. 1. Words alone are inadequate for building useful mental models of even simple systems. We become reliably confused when we try to reason in language about interconnected dynamics. 2. Even a perfect visual model is difficult to simulate mentally. The map helps, but it doesn't close the gap completely. 3. The combination of visual mapping and computer simulation does close that gap. It makes the invisible structure of a system visible and testable, and it gives us a reliable basis for thinking about how to improve performance. If you want to explore this model further or share it with others, click the link below. This Rookie Pro model is available on the IC Systems Exchange.